I can stand up closer.
No, that's fine. I think I had to tell it to go to the,
So if you
That's-
unmute, can you unmute Mark and just ask Mark?
I think it had.
And it's an institutional uses.
That should be good. We've had that issue
Yes, thank
before, just.
Okay, it looks like-
understanding. There it is. Okay, we've got the green. So just repeat everything you said up until now.
Okay.
Well, I tell you what, I'm not gonna do that, but I will do it quick. So go back up to the first slide.
Yeah, yeah,
Here we go.
Good.
Okay.
thank you.
So,
We'll get you.
well, we've got,
Do
lots of
it
people in the room,
Can people hear me now? Is there a way for me to know
so.
that?
Yeah, so there's the green, but this microphone is turning green, so I think.
Okay, so that says,
Yeah.
that's a good thing?
That's a good thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a very quick summary for everything I just said,
Okay.
which is, this shows the process. The process is 2 steps. First is the special area study. That gives us the data, that gives us the science that everything else is based on. That does not approve any development at all. The vote, if there is a vote on October the 7th, which is when it's currently, I'm sorry, November the 7th,
Yeah.
which is when it's currently scheduled. That vote would be, if they decide to do so, the county commission would accept the study. Doesn't approve any development, it accepts the study, the data, the science upon which the later action is based. So then the next action after November the 7th, if the study is accepted, is the university and the Lees would prepare the special area plan, the SAP. The plan is what sets out what the parties would do. The university on the one hand, which is the golf course and some institutional uses, which I'll get into, and the Lees, where there are 2 scenarios of the development or preservation of their property. So if you go to the next slide, Lindsay, not that one,
The
this
conservation.
one, the other one was the old plan. This is one of the 2 scenarios in the new plan. This is the conservation scenario, which includes the golf course property being used as a golf course and some institutional uses. You'll see institutional, what does that mean? That means things that are uses that are supporting the golf course, like a clubhouse, locker room, that kind of thing. But also they in the special area study as a possible use here, included among the institutional is 30 cottages for people who would need to spend the night if they're practicing on the golf course or training on the golf course, using it or whatever. So 30 cottages. And that's it for the institutional uses. So again, this is conservation scenario number 1 in the special area study, which requires multiple scenarios. And all the dark green in conservation area 1 would be a conservation preservation protections easement. A conservation easement is one tool which could be used there. That would be funded by the state and perhaps by the county. The Lees are pursuing that now. That's what we want to happen. That's what we hope will happen. The university is an advocate side by side with the Lees in getting that done. It's a decision by the legislature, by state agencies, and then again, the county also would likely play a role. But so that would put the dark green in conservation. The next scenario, the second one, is the what's called alternative scenario here. But if the conservation easement is not done, if the state decides not to fund it and if that does not go forward, then this is a variation on what was proposed last year as an alternative. And it gets rid of the solar farm, but it puts residential use in. It does keep the special management area west of Parker, which is a very large area that would be remanaged and restored as habitat, like sandhill habitat is what it is now. But so the green that you see there west of Parker, that would be that preservation area. And then the green, and then east of Parker would be the golf course. That's the golf course use in both scenarios. Green is preservation, the institutional year there as well, and then to the south. South of the golf course is again residential uses and a town center kind of use. That is the other scenario in the study. But again, if the study is accepted by the board on October 7th, that is not approval of this development. There's not, they can't do anything with this development with just the study approval. Next year will be the special area plan, which will get into the detail of what these are and what would happen on it. So I just want to make sure that everybody understood that structure as the process, and the discussion about the golf course and the management practices and stuff is just to give you detail that the scientists at UF and the people who know how to do special stuff with golf courses to make sure that the groundwater is protected and that the geologic features are protected. They're working on it to make sure all that happens at the golf course. So that just applies to that. But that, I just want to give that summary. Thank you for indulging.
Oh, thank you. That's our presentation, so I'll step over so you all, the board can discuss.
Okay.
We'll just take down any questions.
Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, great presentation. I have a question for clarity. So this map that we have printed in front of us,
Yes.
it doesn't seem to correspond exactly to either of those scenarios, like, it has, and it might be the first scenario, but it has like this conceptual conservation easement that's not in that.
You know, that is confusing.
I thought I pulled it from.
Sure.
This was the original. All they're showing is what was basically agreed upon as the set aside areas that Steve had looked at and said,
Yeah.
"You know, this area needs to be conserved. These areas need to be conserved. There are things of importance here." And this is a small, but
Yeah.
it's not really a scenario. It's basically what it looked like last year is sort of an agreement that we had, and what were the special areas that needed to be studied, looked at, and had been looked at, said, you know, these are important. We want these things protected.
Kind of layering in it.
Yes.
Yep, so that's a good way to
Yeah,
say, so
the-
you could see that
The
footprint.
reason why it's not shown there is that has an easement over all of it.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
doesn't really,
Yeah.
you know, need to show those. It's
Yeah.
all would be protected.
I keep
under that.
thinking that's a
Okay.
confusing one to look at.
Well,
but
yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
and because the dark one is local and state, and then the other one says a county.
It is-
So-
it is-
That was from the share file.
It's like,
That's,
it's like a big company. Everybody's got a little pot of money,
Okay,
so
gotcha.
you gotta work with them.
No, that was submitted to show, again, what was defined as a conservation management area, but when you have the full conservation that you see in that dark green, it's not necessary, but it was meant to help show what was on the footprint kind of moving forward in layers, right? But this, why you see it's missing, it does that service, right? Because it's all in conservation easement. I didn't hear the other question, though.
I think that was it.
Oh, okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
The conservation easement, is that near a wildlife corridor by any chance?
Yeah, it's mapped as to what aspect.
Well,
It's slightly near a wildlife corridor.
just looking at
But if
connectivity.
you look at-
I mean-
I think their best
Yeah.
activity is to the southwest. Which would be heading towards, you've got some prairie land, you've got watermelon pond, you've got a lot of farm and agriculture going that way.
okay,
And if you look, what they call Flint Rock is that green piece in the middle there, which is to the west of Parker, but right next really to our property on both sides. Gives it somewhat of a corridor within this 6 mile area from which animals could. You know, you still gotta go across Parker, which is great fix, but
thank you.
Go ahead, Bettina.
And the alternative scenario, who came up with that and how was it decided, how many residential areas to include in there?
We don't know that yet.
Yeah.
So these are just big picture. Yes,
Mhm.
you have to
you
legally
have to provide options.
provide options of what can happen with the property.
So the number of units and stuff would be dealt with
At the next.
in the next phase, of the special area plan, because remember, if the county accepts, let's go to the next thing. because this is the one she's asking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the county accepts the study, which has that as a scenario, still doesn't approve any development, not a single house, not a single anything. What it does is the study takes the data and runs these two alternatives through it to see, okay, what is it that even if you put some yet to be determined number of houses in where the orangish brown is, what areas would you want to set aside for preservation? That's why the green is there. That's why the green wraps around. It's a way to sort of test the data on a couple of different scenarios, but neither of those scenarios is quote approved for development or anything. They're just a way to test the data that's been gathered.
And what data are you testing? I mean, what is the question, I guess? What are you testing?
Great.
What was the study?
Mhm.
What's tested?
Well, my family decided a few years ago that we we're gonna go ahead and bite the bullet, and we hired a large environmental firm to basically inventory for us, what's on that property.
They
What's
ground
important.
truth the whole property.
I forget, they walked 154
And
some
the
miles.
study is detailed and it's in the record.
So they studied, and Steve could back this up over there, that, they did. This, animal.
Animals,
Okay.
plants,
Yeah,
geologic features, the caves, the groundwater,
They looked for
Recharge.
Indian mounds, which weren't any, or, all that sort of stuff, was all thrown in. And they went through the entire, it took them months and months to do this. And,
those are
So-
those
Yeah.
later maps, if you
Yeah,
wanna scroll down to that. So that's an example, that's an example of what they studied, so that, and that's one of about 10 or 15 maps. That one is a map of the geologic features that need to be protected. That's why that green blob on the east side of Parker runs up in that kind of funny shape, because it's protecting all of those geologic features that were studied. The same with any threatened plant species, the same with the gopher tortoises, the same with all of those were looked at. They're in a big thick document that's part of that study.
Like an
It's
inventory.
online.
That's what you've been looking at from the last year. Yep.
I've got a whole series of questions, but I'll just ask one at a time, so I don't dominate. But I first want to say, not speaking for the committee, but just for myself, I really appreciate that the Lee family is considering and going after that first scenario.
Yes.
Mr. and Miss Lee, we really
we're very
appreciate that.
positive. We think,
Yeah, I can't thank you enough
oh, you're.
for doing that. Thank you very much. Now, I appreciate it a lot.
Now here comes the bad one.
Oh, no.
You're familiar with this pattern, are you?
Irrigation of the golf course in the summer is estimated at 1 million gallons per day. It is in the document a promise that harvested stormwater and GRU reuse water will be sufficient to provide that. I understand from last night's meeting that people there were reassured that GRU knows this requirement, and they indeed are confident that they can supply that 1.0 million for summer watering, and I understand it's less during the winter. Do we have a guarantee that that's true? That's against the background of, there's a backup well.
Our level of service.
I was told the GRU in the future is gonna have millions and millions of gallons of water they can't get rid of.
So
So
the
GRU
answer
said
is-
that they could handle it.
Yeah, so they've said that they can
And
handle
don't
it.
forget, it rains a lot in Florida in the summertime.
Well,
You don't have to have the
these-
spigot on all.
none of these questions are adversarial, Mr.
Yeah.
Lee. No, I just want to be confident, because I'm gonna, ultimately, we're gonna have to say something in support or in
Right.
opposition, so I want to make sure that I have my data correctly. And there's a companion question, then I'll yield. There is an emergency backup well.
Yes.
Are the conditions specified for the use of that well, and how will that use be monitored and by whom? Is that a kind of detail that you guys have thought about or considering? Or If not, should you, just to reassure people? Because as you know, there is a lot of public dismay about this whole golf
Okay.
course thing, regardless of all the goodwill that you won with the other, you know, people. So it's gonna be really important to reassure folks that that emergency well is not gonna be turned on all the time, blah, blah, blah. Has that been discussed?
Not in any detail that you see in the report. I think you're pulling out that would be the backup, so how. they'll
Well, it's
reclaim,
described,
why- Yeah,
it's described as, emergency backup well will be used, so I'm just wondering, under what conditions and who will monitor that?
that's the best management practice.
I think though that at this meeting, we're just trying to get this, we're just dealing with the study, acceptance of the study. Now, once you get past that and the Lee family and the University of Florida sort of split in how they work out things.
I
So
understand
all of
These are
that,
details that would be addressed in a plan.
I understand that.
but they wouldn't be.
What
addressed
I'm
now.
trying to raise here as part of the public
Yes, and
record
they're-
is
they just
that that
wanna know
is a
what your
detail
questions
that
are.
needs to
Be
be.
addressed,
in that-
okay.
I'm sure that man in the back there will.
Thank you
in the
very
next plan will
Now I'll yield to let
Okay.
somebody else.
will be asking those questions.
Do we want to talk just a little bit of more, Steve, can you talk a little bit about that recharge facility? Because I think we kind of brushed over that and we're familiar with that conversation, but the new GRU recharge facility that is still in the works out there.
Yeah, so it's actually visible on this map.
Yeah, it's right up there in the north.
If you, it's right here.
Yes.
So GRU currently is working on the permitting aspect. For this, it's gonna be a county-run park connected with GRU. They're gonna be putting 2 to 3 million gallons of reclaimed water onto this system, creating a wetland system. The strategy of that helps their permitting for the state for conceptive use permitting. That way they don't have to deep well inject the water. It actually will it'll be cleaned even further through the wetland system before it will percolate down into the.
Water.
It's a similar to Sweetwater with a slightly different approach. So Sweetwater is they're lined ponds that move the water through the ponds and then across into the prairie.
Yes.
This system is actually they're gonna put the water out there and it's gonna perk down. So it is a slightly different system. The concept's the same. It's about treating water, improving mostly nutrients. So that's what they're gonna try to accomplish with that. So that's gonna create this wetland park system, which will be open to the public as well. As Mr. Lee pointed out, they have plenty of extra water. And so bringing additional water, reclaimed water to the golf course is something they don't seem to be concerned with. They believe they have that capacity. Because they eventually are thinking up to 5 million gallons, I believe was a possible final approach. Now, that'll be years away as they make sure it's working at a 2 to 3 million gallon per day approach.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Steve, what is the source of this reclaimed water ultimately?
Sure, it's coming from the Kanapahal plant. So it's wastewater from the Kanapahal plant that's treated to secondary drinking standards. That's the stuff that they're spraying out on lawns now at Oakmont, at the Hale Golf Course. And deep well injecting at the Kanapahal plant. So that's where this water is coming from, the Kanapahal, GRU's Kanapahal plant.
So reclaimed water that percolates down there, the general assumption is that the soil and the rock material, porous rock material filter and clean the water as it approaches.
Yeah, along with the wetland vegetation, so it's a combination of everything, so yes, there's a period of time that water should be sitting there and then perking through.
Do you have a wild guess as to how long that percolates?
They are currently doing the soil testing to determine the percolation rates and the amount of water they'll need to pump to meet that time period that they need to get enough treatment to do that. So they're actually doing those tests right now.
They being GRU.
GRU, yes, I'm sorry. And just for people who are listening, this is not the project we're talking about. This is a separate project that GRU is doing, but it's the same concept, is the same, we're using the same reclaimed water.
It occurred to me, why I never wondered about it before, I'll never know. When you have a filter, eventually the filter gets dirty, you know, I mean, in terms of in your house. So what is, assuming that the water was reclaimed thoroughly, and I don't know what the parameters are for that. What accumulates over time, and is it a purely academic, purely theoretical question as to should we be worrying about the filter itself? In this case, the ground. And at some point, is it going to be become an issue?
That is.
It will for
Yeah.
phosphorus, it will for phosphorus, yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
no,
water
I mean, they may
materials-
require redoing, resetting the base of that wetland over time. Similar to they do at Sweetwater, by the way, they go in and they pump out that first flush area that's coming out of the Sweetwater Creek. That has to be, you know, collected and taken out periodically, so they'll have to monitor that. They have systems set in place to know if those water levels are dropping too high or clogging up and going too far. They have some freeboard capacity where they have monitoring that'll trigger them to either stop or add water. But yes, they're gonna have to continually evaluate how they're gonna do that. Yeah. And that's a question for GRU, and those
Yeah,
things will
yeah.
come out as they're finishing their review.
Because that's not the case on the property that's going to be the golf course, though, where they, you know, they put in whatever they use nutrients to keep the grass growing there, you know, that's gonna go right down into the aquifer below. So, but there's no scientist here to answer that question, so I guess we'll have to wait until we do get someone to answer.
Dave, can you, say that question again, because I feel like it's a good one for,
Well, yeah, the question is, you know, what analysis has been made to determine what happens to, the nutrients that are put on, the fertilizers put on the golf course, turf itself. And to analyze, what amount of that is going to make it into the aquifer beneath, which is simply going to go right through because there's no, covering over the aquifer here. Right, so, as for phosphorus, it does build up in the soil, okay, it doesn't go. Nitrogen will tend to move around in a closed system, but this is not gonna be a closed system, it's gonna be open to, going down to the aquifer, so. That's where all my questions lie. And I'm not sure there's an answer for it. I personally, I see the golf course, this is in both views, if you will. I see it's kind of a poison pill, no one has any say about, so to speak, it's just gonna be there either way. And I just see it as deadly to the entire project and the entire, county. What we're trying to do in terms of keeping our water clean. Sad.
I have a.
Lindsay, excuse me, can you go back to the golf course thing?
Sure.
So there are some bullets and we can get you have scientists here who talks about that. But there are some bullets specifically about phosphorus and specifically about the ability of the grass that they put in and the drainage systems that they put in and how those are and the fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides that they use. There are bullets in that which were passed out. This is small print as it goes up there, but it was also passed out to y'all. Where the guy who literally wrote the book on how golf courses can be designed more environmentally friendly, how they are doing all of this. It's detailed in some of those bullets, but also he has a big book that he brought to the meeting yesterday that he wrote. That's the book that's been adopted by everybody as the standard that addresses exactly those issues, treatment, and what they use on the course and how and what happens to that as it drains down. That's all I can say. I certainly don't know it, but we can maybe try and get him back here for a subsequent meeting between now and the SAP comes up.
You mentioned that we had that handout.
Well,
They should.
TR might have thought that we would see printed that we had it printed for you. You may not. It's this board, but
Yeah.
we'll leave.
Can we get this?
Yeah,
one?
yep.
You
You
can
can.
have some.
So we had, it's cut off a little bit because of printer issues, but I think this captures the most of it. This is the same board you're looking at. Should be the same.
Yeah.
But
That was from the poster.
you know, paper.
I have a question, why was the golf course chosen in that area? Specifically?
It's right next, well, it's right next to Hale, Oakmont, and your sources for
Utility.
GRU utilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's the, and it's. And it also, I think, protects, IFAS is able to, in our thought, was able to protect the caves and other things that are in those area a hell of a lot better than other things do.
We haven't actually talked much about the geologic features, not mentioning the caves, so.
Yeah, because I noticed a lot of the geologic features are right where that golf course is, so I was wondering what kind of, how that was thought about.
Go back down to the golf course, Lindsay, because it's hard to see from back there. But there's both those features are protected and a buffer surrounding those features are protected in the green right there. So those will be protected.
Okay, so where all, most of those features are, is that dark green?
Is in the
Yeah.
green,
Yes,
and then the
that's
two patches, those are each about 5 acres each.
And they're only
Oh, wow.
really,
That scales.
Yeah, it's hard to see the scale, that whole blue area.
there's really significant.
Those protection areas are 5 acres each.
Do you see the
Yeah.
squares are 5
And
acres?
they're covered in longleaf pine and large trees that we've kept a huge boundary around.
Okay, do you wanna?
Yeah, it's inconvenient. I understand some of these questions because for one, we don't have the University of Florida folks here. So I understand this is somewhat complicated, but I want it again to be part of the public record. Can you either answer or alert someone to be ready to answer questions about those 30 cottages? Did I read in the proposal that each of those cottages contains 4 units?
4 bedrooms.
4 bedrooms,
Mhm. So
okay?
imagine it, and it's accessory to the golf course, so 4 beds, 1 bath, you can almost imagine it like dorm facilities where we have one shared bathroom facility, shared kitchen
Okay.
facility. So in that sense, it's 1 unit, but we want to be clear that there's 4 rooms that would,
Okay,
attached to it.
and are we going to be reassured that those are going to be absolutely state of the art, environmentally conscious constructions, leads standards and so on? Do we have any information about that? And I understand this is
Yeah.
not the leads. I understand this is the
no, it's not.
UF piece, but
Mhm.
They certainly won't be on septic, which is what the property, if it's
Yeah.
developed out for what it currently is zoned for and everything would be on septic. So they're certainly not on septic. They would have utilities coming in from the east. So to that extent, they're definitely more environmentally sound than if it was developed under the current scenario. But we can get details on that.
Okay.
That would definitely be something that would go into the special area plan. Which is-
I understand that.
Which is
I
great.
understand that.
But it's good to get it, get a note of it here.
And why 3 entrances?
Along Parker, you mean?
Yeah, with the background, and let me read it so that I don't screw it up. Why does the golf course need to put roadways and golf cart crossings on designated conservation management lands?
Get to the golf course.
Well,
Yeah.
there needs to be a plan to get through there from Parker.
Why 3 times?
Well, not each time. So we'll hear on this part that we see this pod that you see in here,
Yes,
it's about 16 acres on itself. So it would directly connect and not necessarily cross this tail, right? So we would plan for having access direct to Parker. But these 2 points, if you look at this blue area, that's 98 acres. So just access management along Parker on that frontage would call for it. But as
I'm
we
sorry, access,
access management along Parker Road, we would want to distribute the uses that would be on 98 acres off more than 1 entrance just to Parker Road.
why?
So that they're not all funneled off of one entrance, so that we
Why?
have better traffic
Well,
distribution.
An example would be if all the cars go in on one road, that's gonna have to be a wider road that's gonna have more of an impact going
I
through
don't,
there.
I don't know if you guys wanna start talking about roadway traffic, cause you
Yeah,
got,
really.
you know, you got, heavy traffic on both sides.
So it's
But
about
I
that
understand that's not a
networking
Lee family issue.
I'm saying spread out over 3 entrances, the road can be smaller and less impactful than if you put all of it on one road going through, and it has to be a big wide road that goes through.
Where,
So, and then,
Okay.
so that's the 3 entrances on Parker, and then with regard to planning for crossings for golf cart, again, this is this is about 119 acres. It wouldn't be through everything, but you knew on the geologic features map that you have in front of you, it's not all full within that area. So having limited areas that you would have for a crossing is good planning when you get to that point. So that's why you say that in the report.
So we do have, the conservation management area, the CMA is a county designated area. That's what you're referring to there, right? And so
Yeah.
we do have regulations as far as the type and the width of path that can be allowed through a CMA. So they would
that's
have to.
exactly the kind of reassurance we're looking for.
Right,
And the fewer of those that we have, the better for the environment. That's just the point.
Question, from the legend, it seems like this area is under contract and it seems like it has a SAP
Yes.
versus just this being a SAS situation. So are some of these concerns that we're raising around that UF property included in the current SAP?
This is to tell us that this will be the first SAP to come in. So when TR was saying we're here today about the special area study, that includes all the lands, but this will be that first special area plan to come
But it's not
online.
pending
It's
yet.
not-
Yeah,
It
it
has
doesn't
not been
exist.
submitted.
Yeah, this is trying to tell us this is, we wouldn't have a special area plan moving forward on the whole 4,000 acres. So that's good. That's a good question, just for this portion, the 580.
And so the under contract,
Yes.
are there any stipulations for the contract that relate to some of these concerns to make sure that UF aligns with the Lee family's expectation for the rest of their land?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
I was asking, since it's under contract, are there any?
What is under contract?
Well, here,
The
the
UF
UF
land.
land.
Yes, okay,
So-
so we got a memorandum of understanding.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, does that MOU include some of these concerns around conservation or issues with the land and all that? Not the
We-
area, but I'm talking about like some of the things that we're bringing up about that land.
I'm not sure are you specifying the land that the golf course would be on?
Yes.
Yes, and that has been delineated by the study and is highlighted in the light green that you see on that map.
But I think we have other questions around the water usage and the.
But may I reiterate,
Pesticides
that
and
this
things like
first
that.
meeting is just to accept the plan. If
And
they
accept
accept
the
the plan,
study.
they accept the study,
Mhm,
then you address all of these things.
mhm.
You see, this.
And the
I mean,
land
that's-
would be subject to that. I think
Yes.
that's the
But
point.
you
Okay.
realize the problem,
And it
That's
is
what I'm
our-
asking.
and it is our understanding that they are going to, that, you know, UF and IFAS, I've worked with IFAS now 6 years, and talking to them, that, I'm pretty sure that they have a good understanding of how to do this. And, I'm sure also that
Mhm.
when and if they accept the study, Steve and his group will help them access the plan. And, you know, they will have a say, the county will have a say in how that works, because those things will be protected. I'm sure there's a best way to do that, but I can assure you, because I know exactly what's out there, that there are about 3 significant things on there. The rest of them are small depressions. And driving a golf cart across one of those areas is not gonna have much. They've had tractors over across them forever. Most of those are depressions. There are only a few of them that actually are open to the aquifer.
I just want to make sure that area is not exempt to the things that we're talking about.
Right.
Since in each of these maps, that's the only area that's, clearly
Carved out.
delineated.
But as I
Yeah.
said, that will
That's the point.
all come when they start having to.
Yeah.
Plan this.
Mhm.
The
As
special
a-
area
Yeah,
plan.
we're just asking for an acceptance of the entire study of the property. And all that comes later. when you bring up these technical questions about water use, land use, roads, entranceways, billboards, all that stuff. I'm just kidding about billboards.
That one just looked right. Well, I
To
think it
some
might be
extent.
appropriate to say if this, even though this stage of the game is just the special area study, if you all had some general ideas in mind right now, I think it would appropriate to say we understand. It's too early for this, but we recommend going into the special area plan. Here are some.
Yeah.
General 5 overarching principles that
Yeah.
we would like to see incorporated into the plan when they get there.
Yeah.
I think if you wanted to say something like that tonight, that's an option. You said November 7th is when this is
Yeah.
going to the
Yes.
commission. That's actually our next meeting date. That's the
Yeah.
first Tuesday of the
Yes,
month.
it's a special meeting.
Okay.
So this is.
During the day?
Set up, it should be in the evening, same time.
Okay,
Yes,
So we'll need to have a
so-
meeting in between now and then if we want to have some further discussion on.
Well, and we would want to consider that date if people from this meeting wanted to attend that meeting.
Yeah, I think maybe we should schedule a subcommittee meeting, just for those folks who want to dig in and maybe make a recommendation. Unless everybody feels like confident that we can make a motion tonight, but for me at least, like, it seems like we won't like land on something that we'll all agree on right now. I could be wrong. What do y'all feel?
Yeah, I think we need to discuss it a bit more,
Another meeting.
go do a more deeper dive on the materials that are available.
Cautiously to delineate everything,
Yeah,
agree on pretty much on everything.
okay,
I
yeah.
got a quick question. The 5 modifications since the original plan, that was worked out with the Lee family and county staff, I assume?
The 5 modifications.
The
The very
five
first
significant
five.
modifications
Five.
that have been done, which essentially
The removal of
Is-
the solar.
you eliminated.
Well, that wasn't worked out with the county,
You-
that was worked out,
You,
well, we have talked to the county.
Okay,
yeah,
But, we did a different plan.
okay.
In part, it was a response to the comments from last September.
September,
That's what I was thinking.
yeah,
Like the solar is an example of that.
Right.
People didn't like the solar's out.
So, yeah, county staff did provide comments on the initial
Oh,
study.
absolutely, I mean,
Right,
they,
probably provided comments, yeah.
I think we've been working with y'all for at least 2 months.
2 years.
Well.
Maybe just to clarify. We aren't, the property owners, the consultants, the county, we all agreed on the location of the conservation areas. That has not changed, so
Yeah.
there's no modifications to those are all still in place. That's I think, an important point to make here.
Steve, do we have a copy, or Summer, whoever, do we have a copy of the map that we generated, or had you guys generate for us last time?
Yeah, all that
That's-
stuff is in the backup, all the staff reports, all the maps.
I've been asking if we have it now, we're viewing now. I just want to see it right next to what we're looking at here. With our recommendation versus what they want to do.
Are you talking about the
What did you
conservation management
recommend?
areas? Because those are the same. The map we had last time is the same as the map you're seeing here in terms of the conservation areas we were recommending.
We recommended without there being anything provided for a golf course. So I'm wanting to see the map that we did overall for the recommendation as well in terms of,
There's a map that Mark produced as a result of EPAC's comments. It was a little different, I think, from the map that is in the plan, because what happened was we produced the map. We had the initial meeting, we produced the map, and then things were kind of put on hold, so we stopped moving forward.
I've got it at home, just so.
Yeah, we do
I
have
don't-
that on a shared drive. I mean, I can get that to everybody. And that would have been a result of the discussions that EPAC was having. So we generated the map, and then, like I said, we didn't end up moving forward from there.
Right.
It didn't come back up until now. So that does exist.
And
yeah.
I'll make a comment also here, as far as the US land, once it's given to them, however it's got. The county has nothing in terms of controlling how the state manages their land. We really, we may be able, for example, to comment about something happening on Paints Ferry, but we have no control over what they do over there. So, I mean, I'm concerned that, we're worrying about things that are in a document. We can't control what US does.
If the conservation easement is put in place, we will have, that control will be in
Yeah.
place, no matter who owns the
Right,
property.
and I'm not worried about that as I am the rest of the property. I mean, I've lived in golf courses all my life. If I grew up as a kid living in one, and when I was about 12, we moved to another, okay? My dad was a big golfer, so it's not, I'm against golfing or anything like that. It's just that I'm concerned about having a golf, if you were saying this was gonna be somewhere east of Gainesville, and there was a location over there that was, suitable for this, I wouldn't be complaining about it. What I'm thinking is, here we're talking about putting a golf course directly over an unconfined portion of the aquifer. And I don't care what you do, I don't care how good these guys at Florida, US say they are, they know that's not a good idea. So. I just wanna look at the other map and see what we have. here.
Yes, so I think, I mean, I hear you, David, and so what you said about the new way of designing golf courses, I think we need to learn about that,
Yes, agreed,
yeah,
absolutely.
and see what, what.
So those
What that
bullets
would
on that
entail.
sheet that was passed around,
Mhm.
that summarizes a lot of the concepts. But the gentleman, we can see if he can come here.
Does IFAS have that information?
They wrote that.
They
wrote it.
yeah,
They
they
wrote
wrote the book.
So that's a good point. So we're either having Brian Unrow with the university come, but in here, this part, see where we have additional working group meetings, that's really where you get into the details will become recommendations. So certainly you can come anytime before then, but the concept is then we're with your committee, we're with other working groups, and that's where you can have access to them, but
Right, correct. So again, the way Lindsay is proposing to set up the process for next year, the special area plan is to have certain working groups, you call them working groups or committees, working groups on certain issues. The golf course will be one of those. So there will be a working group that talks about nothing but the golf course. The golf course guy from IFAS people, they'll all be there to be talking about all the things that are summarized in bullets on that table there.
I have a question. So this is just a study, right? And there's two scenarios that have been mapped out and studied. Do you have a sense of like what the possibility that just one scenario goes through wholeheartedly as a plan? Or do we expect to see some hybrid of the two? Or do you have a sense of like how that would kind of fall out? Because I mean, this one is nice in the fact that it's just conservation, but we have that other one with residential, and do we kind of anticipate maybe that
third.
end up, some of that coming through as part of the actual plan?
Well, if you can figure out politics, I'd be willing to listen.
Negotiations have been ongoing, and so we're just as much in the dark as you are. And we have been pursuing a conservation easement since what, 2016?
Since 2016.
So part of,
But-
Negotiation,
but
we
it-
have to work with politicians, we have to work with government. We're working with two governmental entities. So it's gonna happen when it happens, and there's nothing much more we can do about that.
But I'll tell you this, we are much more positive now,
About the first scenario?
the first scenario.
About the-
in part because the university is fully behind it.
In part because the university is behind it, therefore the state is very excited about
Yeah, if you have
can
people like
drive stuff
EPAC
forward.
that are behind it and
it. That's right.
things like that.
That's right, but as I said,
And recommend to our friends and neighbors and
Right.
fellow commissioners.
but that-
It's your first.
y'all are all gonna, I know this organization is gonna get into the weeds, but I said, all we've done is brought the horse into the barn, we haven't put a saddle on yet, so
Yeah.
you're gonna have to. Get
Yeah.
the study passed.
Follow-up question on saying, so the UF is behind scenario one. I'm wondering what their like incentive for supporting one versus two is, because they get the same thing either way, right?
Right, they have no interest in
Well,
development.
maybe TR can mention, but wouldn't you wanna have your premier golf course
Yeah,
with nothing but conservation around it?
I mean,
They don't even
Yeah.
wanna see a home, they don't wanna see a.
That's why it's so big.
That's what makes it so wonderful, it would be beautiful.
Gotcha.
The university is 1000% behind the conservation area approach, behind lobbying legislators in the state for that approach, behind lobbying for the money. Up to the very top of the university, masthead and down are fully behind this and lobbying and pushing for the funding that gets this to happen here.
I have one concern though, if you remember Bob Palmer, a former chairman, warned after an IFAS professor came and talked about the virtues of the fertilization policies that they were advocating. And Bob Palmer, I think, perforated and eviscerated the notions that the university had on fertilization. So, fertilizer. So the same could possibly happen with their blessings on this new technology for golf courses. How many years ago did?
Oh,
Bob
that
give
was maybe 5-6 years ago.
So I mean, things may have changed, the technology may have advanced, and maybe it's real, maybe it's wonderful, but we should not let our guard down. We can't just defer to the so-called expertise of the university, even though it may be there. They could be wrong, and they could be painting rosy pictures, just like IFAS did about fertilizer. And that's just my thought, that
I think they're motivated to, given how much land we have in the state that is over an unconfined portion of the Africa zone.
I have a question. I guess you need, I don't know how this all came about, but I think scenario A, the conservation scenario, if that goes through, I would be very happy with that. I know there is the golf course, but I guess there must be a reason why the golf course is there, and I don't know if, we
It's not 1,000
should
homes.
just, find the needle in
Keep
the
discussions
haystack.
within us for a while there and ask questions when we need to, rather than having this be a constant go back and forth, because we're not gonna make any headway at all in terms of our discussion with, if we're gonna be open, if every comment is gonna be open, okay? I just think that's, we've heard, what their arguments are and what the changes have been, but we need to have some time for discussing them.
Remember that what Mr. Lee just said is important. It's not a golf course or conservation, it's a golf course or some alternative use. So he just said, or it's 1,000 homes, or worse yet, it's homes under the current entitlements, which are septic tank.
Yeah, that's important.
And if you read this parts of the SAS and you read parts of what the golf course comments are, they at one point compare the septic tank to the golf course part. It isn't a comparison to that. So
I don't mean to cut you off. David, can we schedule our subcommittee meeting before you go? Just
Why don't we do that? By the way, I want to respond, okay, to the comments there is I'm not convinced that a better plan wouldn't be to allow a certain amount of development on the properties overall, rather than having the golf course. I still see the golf course as a poison pill, the entire project. Whatever, as long as that's in there, I don't see it as being a viable project. I do see a certain amount of development being viable and being acceptable, and it should be enough development, to give them a good return, for on the property, money wise. But the golf course to me at this point in time seems like it's a no, it's a no win. Lose for everybody. I'm not convinced that US is going to be able to change my mind on that either. Okay. I do intend on doing some more research on, what they're doing with golf courses, but I don't necessarily trust you to follow that. Heck, they just passed, facility build, a new, plant for natural gas without any plan to move forward from that, to anything else. Natural gas is terrible. It's not as clean as we used to think it was at one point in time. So anyway, I really do think that we need to consider this a little deeper. It's in the study. Okay, I'm not sure it should be. It's in there in two places. And I think it's there because they're going to get a certain amount of support from the UF by having it there. And it seems to be logical. I mean, that's how I would do it. If I was trying to get something done, I would say, okay, let's get UF in there and we'll give it to them either way. And then they'll support the plan. Okay, I mean, that's reasonable to accept. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad plan either. I mean, it's, if they can satisfy, my concerns about having the golf course there and how they're going to run it, and we can get a plan, a plan in place that actually does have the state, purchasing, rights on a lot of the other properties around it, or a lot of the property around it, then, that may be the better plan. So I'm not,
You have to be open.
yeah, I'm not being adversarial here. I am saying I'm going to be critical in terms of, I want to think this out and make sure we're coming up with the best possible plan for the, the members of Alachua County. And since the study will have it in either way, I'm not sure that allows us to get to a point where we have a good plan. Okay, so I think something does need to be done on this before we agree, to say, oh yeah, we'll support, passing the study, accepting the study. There was an old study, too, that didn't have that on there at all. I assume that's why it was written, to get this and other, considerations in there.
Well, I assume that the reason they're being so generous with the conservation land is because of the golf course.
Yeah.
So that's probably why that's a big key factor in this.
Right.
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to see the math. What's the math for, how much, nitrates, and phosphorus we're going to be putting into the aquifer, and building up the land and all that, if we use the golf course or versus a certain amount of development.
Do we have any idea, like if the Gainesville Golf and Country Club that's
you know, you're just looking at tens of millions of dollars of putting in roads and infrastructure through your conservation. You see, to get the people in there, you gotta go through Flint Rock and, you know.
Now, if there has to be a golf course in this property, that's probably the best location. I'll agree with that.
I mean, if everybody agrees that the golf course is a bad idea, again, you can say in your letter, we don't like the idea, I'm just saying hypothetically, we prefer that there wasn't a golf course, but if there is a golf course, we would like assurances or something along those lines. I mean, if you all agree on that, I mean, you can still say that
I
at
don't
this
think
point
we
in
have
time.
enough information to say that.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
that's what I
And then I
wanted
have
to
a
say.
question.
Let's invite that gentleman who knows about how to design golf courses.
With the big book.
Yeah.
With the
With the
big,
big book, that
They'll bring the book.
fellow with the big book, and could we have, as a committee, could we have a special meeting for him prior to November?
Oh, we could have a subcommittee meeting for that purpose. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, it has to be, it has to be a subcommittee meeting and we, I mean,
But everybody could come.
everybody can come. for
We
sure.
could also have our water resources folks come and talk to us, because again, we're talking about septic systems.
Yes,
We've been
please.
really working to
Yes.
get advanced septic treatment. I just went to an all-day workshop on that Water Resources put on. So I think our water resources people probably have a lot of information on septic. And I think that is really an important component that keeps being brought up when we looked at the urban services boundary and the possibility of having all of those houses on what is now slated as conservation would have been on septic. Even if we put advanced treatment units in there. So I think water resources, I don't know about getting this golf course person in, but I would imagine that water resources has information on fertilizers, applied to lawns as well as septic, and could give us some baseline calculations for that.
But, and why can't we get the golf course guy?
Oh, we can certainly, yeah, we can ask him too. Yeah, we
We
can ask him
We could
too.
both of them at the same time, so we can see, you know, one against the other.
yeah.
I can't guarantee his,
Yeah.
I can communicate more easily with our water resources folks, so I wanted to offer that out there versus, you know, I can
Right,
pull up
right.
their calendars and look right now at a meeting versus I don't know this golf course.
So
guy,
that's,
so.
that's pretty much
Yeah.
exactly what I was asking for, so you got it.
Yeah.
Who's the golf course
The
guy?
golf course guy, his name is Brian.
His name is Arnold Paul. No.
Different certifications that golf courses can have, so Brian is something or other, Brian Palmer.
Yeah, UNRUH.
He was at last night's.
He was, and he.
He was at last night's.
UNRUH
Is his last.
is his last name, Brian, yes.
He was at the workshop last night.
Oh,
So,
okay.
let's,
He was at
Yeah.
the workshop last night answering
No,
people's
that's
questions, and was
Did
there.
y'all come to the workshop last night?
no, because we were told you were presenting.
Yeah, there's a
It's fine.
sunshine law issue too, if all of these folks show up, this is a meeting that was advertised publicly and open to the public, so if we
Okay,
have
we'll
everybody
get
show
in
up.
here.
it's-
Yeah.
Are
That-
these
that-
And his
people
book.
elected
That's
officials?
Yes, and the book, I was.
And
They're
Arnold
appointed
Paul.
by the commission.
I think we've accomplished about what we can in this configuration, Madam Chair.
Yeah,
I think we ought to allow these folks to,
they can stay or whatever we need to separate our speaking.
Okay.
Right, we would like to move on just briefly to the work plan. as we-
Thank you.
I just want to say I appreciate you
Yeah,
coming.
thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because I got another one.
I had another-
Thanks, Mr.
Conservation.
I get that feeling. So help me with the plan.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Mr. Lee.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's their consultant.
Consultant.
Me, Haga with A,
Ada,
delicious, good
ICP. Well, no, with ETF, sometimes in that AICP is my planner license.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm just hanging around for a second, 'cause,
Yeah, that's fine. It's an open
she
meeting.
had, no, Summer having a jump drive, so.
David, we still have to talk about, making a proposal for grant.
Yeah, I started to write it, but I needed a couple of things from Sumner County and I didn't get them, okay? One of them was I needed a sample of how they have, you know, proposals written for them so that I can, you know, give them a proposal that has all the, you know, sections that they want, answered out. And I needed the price that we were recommending for the equipment and however modules we're gonna get for it, and that I need to get from you, okay? I've managed to locate the page, on the internet, for the company, so I found that, but that's all I have. I don't know how much it costs for. I didn't get costs on that page.
But apparently, the companies that sell the product, better to deal with them than to go to the company that manufactures them.
Oh, okay, yeah, usually, yes,
Yeah, and so there's one in New Jersey, and I think there's one elsewhere, and I've talked with both of them. Been a long time since we've been international.
If someone had that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember that, I was trying to remember to bring that to you, yeah.
I may have given it as far long ago as March.
Yeah.
Before summer.
Yeah, I think it was, thanks.
So,
I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing.
should we go ahead and, try to schedule a tentative date for the subcommittee meeting?
Yeah,
And
let's
we can
do
reach
that.
out to Brian.
Can
if
we-
he's available.
Can we get more clarity about what that meeting's purpose is?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think we need a direction that's really specific. I mean, tonight's meeting dissolved in a sense, because we thought we were just going to react to the whole document, but quite clearly they didn't have a university person here. So they could duck our questions by saying, well, that's a university.
Yeah,
It's-
it turned into be a sales meeting rather than.
We've got to get a focus and a purpose and make sure the right people are there with the right information, or we risk having another repeat of tonight.
Agreed.
And which was hard on everybody. I mean, I think the Lee family walked out here thinking we're a bunch of buffoons, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I also think it wasn't that.
Well, they wanted us to rubber stamp the SAS, okay, and that's not how it works for this committee. This committee wants to look at the science and the numbers and see.
I understand that, David. I understand that exactly. What I'm saying is, we need to be real clear that our purpose is, we want to hear the science. We specifically want to hear the science around the golf course.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna take time out of our lives for another meeting, it has to, in my judgment, it has to be a meeting where the purpose is absolutely crystal clear and the right people to satisfy that purpose are invited.
And I'm not sure that someone from UF is going to be able to, answer that, because they're going to be in a position of, we need to get the golf course approved.
Yeah.
okay?
But
That-
is the golf press guy, is from UF?
Yes,
But is he a scientist? Is he like a biologist?
The scientists over at UF aren't always.
he is advertised as the leading expert on environmentally responsible golf courses in the United States. I have no way with my background of judging the legitimacy of that label, but that's the way he's
We
labeled.
can pose the question on the internet. Are there responsible ways to do it? And what are the counterpoints to that?
Like,
Yeah.
do independent research ahead of time.
Yeah, just do some Google searching, pose the question, are the latest technologies for golf courses really what they say they are?
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get hits on that.
Right.
We'll get
Of course,
answers.
Yes, we will.
Everything has one that's been built.
It'll lead
Yeah.
us,
To show that-
and then we ask
a
the
blueprint.
next question, and we get answers, and we ask more questions.
And ultimately, in terms of output, I mean, the most impactful thing we can do as a committee is send a motion to the board, right? So that's what our ultimate aim should be, is what do we want to include in a motion for the subcommittee meeting, yeah.
Okay.
Which means also we need.
Well, the
more.
board is asking us to recommend something by the 7th. Is that right?
Yeah, that's why we need a subcommittee.
Doesn't it have to be a week before or something,
Sure.
summer, or there's some rules around time.
One meeting enough, though.
We're kind of pushed.
I
it
think
to
it's
November
under-
7th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel uncomfortable assuming that as little as we know right now, because we haven't gotten any definitive answers, we, in some respects, haven't even figured out what are the right questions. And to me, lining up the questions is the ultimate first step. Because then you can quickly move, for answers.
So, I mean, this is the least property, right?
Mhm.
And they can do with it whatever they want to, right?
Yes.
Right?
I mean, it would be worth going back
Within-
into the
within-
2022, in the 2022 documents, there are build out scenarios that, I mean, yes, technically, this is zoned one house per 5 acres and divide 4,000 acres, you know, by that, and you can
Yeah.
conceivably, they could put that many houses on
Yes,
it. yeah.
but so the point also is they are really interested in conservation apparently, because they set aside, I mean, most of their property for conservation, and the only concession they made is the golf course.
Can I-
So
here's-
I think that's pretty nice.
I agree.
Here's what I wanna be able
I
to,
agree.
to make the board aware of, okay? Because they're the important party here, right? We're serving their need, and they need to know, you know, and we're just helping to facilitate. They need to know at what point can the study move forward, and, you know, if it moves forward and ultimately becomes a plan, you know, at what point do they need to, you know, to restrict the plan to looking like A, B, or C, or whatever? So what we can do to help them get there is say, okay, look, if you've got a full plan like the first one they show you, the conservation plan, if it looks like that, possibly, okay, based upon what we get back from the water people, what we get back from the, you know, an expert on golf course, you know, this is a better, you know, usage of the land, and it's a cleaner usage of the land, if you will, than, you know, than any of the others we've looked at, okay? Then we've got another, what happens if, you know, the state says, well, yeah, we'll give you conservation easements, but it's only over half of the land, okay,
Right.
that they're proposing to be used. And it may be that doing that then completely turns the picture around where it's better just to, you know, say, no, the golf course can't be in it, and, you know, use some more property because you're already way past, you know, the damage point. But all of it depends upon what, you know, the first reports come back on, what, you know, per acre, or, you know, however many acres it could be developed. What that looks like if it's got, you know, 5 units per, what is it, 1 unit every 5 acres?
Yeah, so this was
Yeah.
their 2022 scenario that they had originally proposed with the solar facility, the mixed use development.
Yeah, I remember the
Yeah.
golf being down
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's a good memory. That's a really good memory. I didn't remember that.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
go ahead, Jay.
I think the golf course is non-negotiable.
It
Yeah.
seems like it.
Seems like-
I think our spending time trying to defeat the golf course is an empty effort.
Yeah.
I do agree that we want to know the best science and perhaps include that in our recommendation, but I think trying to oppose the golf course is impossible.
Yeah.
It's a fait accompli.
Okay, let's assume that is absolutely correct. We can still push for, if there is any wiggle room for how it's done.
And I
we
agree
should
100%.
pursue it, Which means if each individual here wants to spend a little time in their day Google searching for things that they, to give them the confidence to say, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. In other words, each person do their own research.
Yeah.
That, I think that's, you put one foot in front of the other, and to me,
Yeah.
doing that is.
Doing your, doing your own research, and then maybe thinking about how that would be articulated in a motion.
Right, so that we
Yeah.
all agree on,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
But I want to say, we are not experts. And if we
Right.
Google, this is not expert opinions that we find in Google. Sometimes, yes, it's hit and miss.
You can
And-
get Google Scholar to give you slightly more, you know,
Well, yes, I know.
authoritative.
I know, but also Google Scholar has only select papers. I mean, it's not like, you know, you go back to the library and really keep digging.
Mhm.
So you get a selective, like,
But you get a
snapshot
better-
by
but you
Google.
get a better understanding.
Yes, I'm not against it. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think we should cut down the experts. That's my point.
Right.
I
Let
mean,
me ask you a
there are
question.
people
What
there who
happens-
studied this for decades.
Yeah.
And why do you want to invalidate them, you know, by
No.
Google search?
Can we see the next?
That's
the
not
next
trying to
scenario?
invalidate. it. It's trying-
What happens is, what if the state rejects putting conservation, you know, buying the properties for conservation, and this is the image we
Yeah.
see here, okay? You know, at that point in time, we get back to saying, you know, okay, they got, you know, 1 unit every 5 acres and all that, but that may not be the best way for them to develop it and make money. I think what we presented them with a plan the last time, okay? That got rid of the golf course, but didn't force them into using this, allowed them to use some, some degree of development over the property that was reasonable, that would, allow them to make some money back on their, I say investment in the property, but their ownership of the property. And, so I think there is a possible, I think if he sees it and says, oh, I can actually, get better, I'm doing better conservation wise, and I'm getting more back for my money, doing it this way, why not go that way?
Because oh, go ahead.
I think that the golf course, as far as their family business, is an easy sell for them. It's kind of handing it over in trade for this conservation land, where if they have to develop 5-acre lots, they're gonna have to put infrastructure in and bring the stuff.
Yeah,
in.
but I'm saying, once we get this
Build-
image here,
Build there, they're gonna have to find someone to, it's a lot more moving pieces for them to put houses there to get the bang for their buck.
I think we have to look at the numbers that come in and then say, okay, if we get this image back from the state, because the state can go either way. If it's one of these things where you say it's already, a fait accompli, if it is that.
I
Then
think
this,
the golf course.
then we could easily look like this with the golf course, okay?
Yeah.
And if it looks like this
But-
with the golf
We don't
course,
know what
It's
other
there either
interests
way.
are out there.
Yeah.
The state, I mean, aren't we jumping guns? Shouldn't we wait to hear from the state and then we could?
In the meantime, we can be gathering our own
It
information.
should.
And it may not be flawless information, we may be possibly misinterpreting some of the information, but we're gathering something that we can all discuss. The ideal would be to have maps, convenient maps of all the possible scenarios and just place them down so we get sort of a gestalt kind of thing, and you sort of look over it and you go, oh yeah, this, anyway.
I don't want it to be an emotional decision. I want it to be one that's based upon science, based upon the math that we get. Right now, we're not doing that. We could, if we were to say, okay, SAS will go through, because it's, they're gonna have the.
Who said we don't want to look at science?
No, I'm just saying, this idea of the golf course is a given, okay? I think that's.
I think that's true.
I tend
David.
to agree, with you on that,
Okay.
but it may be that if there's a rejection in the future, and our recommendation, they say, is if the state decides to purchase those properties for conservation, then yeah, this is the best way to go. However, if they decide not to, and depending upon how much they don't, we've got the numbers to look at and say, okay, at this point, it may be better for Mr. Lee to then have this kind of a deal going forward, which allows him, to do a certain amount of development that's better money wise for them than, it would be if we say, okay, it's just, one house every 5 acres, and they're forced to go with
How
that.
are we gonna get the science data on the impact of that development of houses?
But-
Where do we get it?
So I guess that's the special area study.
That's what comes from the
I
county.
mean, they spend how much money?
Yeah, those
probably on that
the
special
studies, I
area
was gonna say,
study?
especially looking back at the first study, I mean, there's an inventory of the different ecosystems that are,
All
in the different areas.
all the
Mhm.
different plants.
and I think they hired Pete. Trying to blank, good, really good biological consultant.
Right.
But the other thing that she did mention is that this has been in the works, these conservation easements have been in discussion since 2016.
Yeah.
But now with UF pushing it forward, so there's also this trade-off that
Sure.
it sounds like you get the golf course, but you get these conservation easements. So I mean, that is something.
And they're not willing to give up.
But what you were saying almost sounds like the
Right.
opening to your letter, that we're concerned that these areas may not be purchased, in which case we're more concerned about that development.
Right.
Right, am I kind of-
My point is, while it may seem as
This
if
is the
it's a
main-
done deal right now to do
Right.
it with the golf course in there. It may be that presented with a plan that rules out the golf course, but gives him a reasonable development opportunity on his property. We get the best of both worlds. We get the minimal amount of development possible with, the minimal amount of pollution, going into the aquifer available, so.
But the only way we get from here with this one little CMA to here with all of this is with the golf course, is what I heard tonight.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of battling over what, yeah.
Put the money behind lobbying the state to make
Mhm.
sure that it is.
Yeah, but okay, have we looked at the difference between the one or 5 houses or one house every 5 acres? And the idea of allowing development in
Is that our
various
job,
areas?
David?
Huh?
This
I mean,
mixed use.
that's a massive job
Yeah.
for
Of
experts
course
in
it
the
is,
field.
of course it is, but I'm saying that
And the meeting is November the 7th.
Yeah.
The first of many meetings, I mean, the next year is set aside, all of next year, when
But
they're
I
talking
mean,
about the
if we're,
plan.
if we're gonna have a letter,
Right,
we
right.
have to.
And you can write multiple letters. I mean, keep in mind, this, just because we're chiming in now, doesn't mean that we walk away.
Yeah.
So
I would
what-
anticipate.
So what does the board need
Right,
that was my question. What are they
asking us?
to be able to approve this
To say
FAS? You know,
Right.
this whole, I don't even know what it is.
We could, right now, we could voice without even having another meeting, we could voice our questions that we have, okay, in a letter. And, and if we agree on that, and we were able to vote on that, we could send that to the board and that would satisfy that need. We're not recommending for or against, accepting the SAS. Here are our questions and the problems we have.
I wrote out my 10.
On the seventh, is the board approving the SAS? Is that what they're doing on the seventh? Yes, so they're asking us to
Yeah.
approve it, because
We
they're
have
planning to
any
approve it on the
input for that,
seventh.
yeah.
It doesn't need to be approve or deny, though. That's a really good point, though. It's up to
sufficient?
y'all.
What is it? What are we being asked?
It's
Are we saying,
it's
is
up
this
to
a
you.
Sufficient study, or are we, what are we?
Right, that's my question.
That's what I'm trying to.
I mean, I would kind of defer to the longtime members who've done this before, because I mean, it's up to y'all what you say to the board. It is always up
Yeah,
to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're not required to come out and support or against it. That's why I was saying what we could do instead of doing that is we could simply state what our questions are and the things that concern us, our concerns and the issues, the math, maybe the science issues even in here, and then say, that's where it's at. We're not comfortable with all the
That
information
might
we
even
have.
be a really good strategy.
Right. I like that, yeah.
Say that again?
I think that might be a really good strategy.
To do.
Say something like we
To-
support the
say-
conservation scenario pending
The
these
things we
scientific
support.
questions about the
To know
golf
what
course.
we support, they should know what we support.
And what the questions are.
Questions.
Right.
But hey, Summer, you said something like, and I forgot your words because I thought that was, put standards into the plan that address any areas of concern as a, yes.
Oh, so that you guys would want to say, yeah, that's tough. I mean, I think
That's what
somebody
he
did bring
said.
up the concern, which is a valid concern because it came up at our staff meeting today as well, is how much control once it becomes part of the state inventory. And so you would be stating that concern in there, right? These are the concerns.
Right. They can say
Yeah.
whatever they want to,
Yeah.
when they come in to talk to the board, but then when they actually go about doing it, I mean, and they've done that before, so,
So they don't get a special use permit from the county to do the golf course?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that kind of concern that had me raising the question about that backup well. Who's gonna monitor the use of that?
Yeah.
Concerns can be presented as questions.
Yeah.
Pressing questions that sort of pin them against the wall with a smile on our faces and say, could you please answer that? And then the other way is to express in declarative statements. We oppose this, we favor this, so we need to do both.
So,
There's my list of questions.
maybe prior to our subcommittee meeting, everybody can kind of do a little thinking on what questions they have, submit them to Summer. And then we can kind of review all of them at the subcommittee meeting, decide which ones we want to keep in and which ones are maybe duplicates or, word
Well, we
them.
also have the Hale Plantation Golf Course that butts right up to it. So I don't know if we could maybe compare the things they're using. I mean, that's a lot of work though. I think our water resources folks might have a lot of answers for us, and it may just be more comfortable in the sense, like, we had other people in the room. It might be nice to just have our folks where you can really ask these candid questions. I mean, you can ask them anyways. I just don't know.
How about the water resource people at the subcommittee meeting?
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I like
subcommittee.
that idea. My only concern is that
But if they
if
can-
it turns into just asking them questions and we don't come
Yeah,
around
yeah.
to getting our letter,
That's a good point. That's a good point too.
Yeah.
Well, we
Yes.
can restrict the amount of time dedicated.
Yeah. And
So I'm trying to see if I can get there.
excuse me. I don't know anything about golf course. Do we need to have turf on a golf course? Or do you have
Yeah,
another substrate that can be?
No, but they have different kind of grasses now that are more water efficient, that don't take so much fertilizer. They're just, the IFAS has developed a lot of the different type of grasses for golf courses and plants in general that are less dependent on water. And that's dependent on fertilizer.
Right.
The problem with IFAS, when it comes to
You
fertilizer,
okay.
though, is they make up
So,
the story,
I
make
won't
up the
be
story
at
themselves,
any other
okay? They
meeting.
make up a lot, what they say can be done and can't be done, and what's real and not real, and they lie,
I disagree with you.
Well, this is what we had, we had people come, from UF and talk to us about it before, I'm going back to the time when we had, what was her.
I forget her name.
Yeah, she was the expert on it, but then every year for like 6 years or 5 years, something like that, she was voted, the state's most, valuable person to the fertilizer industry, so. But she was going around the state,
I should mention, I was an extension agent in another state for 6 years.
Yeah.
So I was a water resources extension agent in another state for 6 years, and I will say that everybody is funded like all science.
There you go.
Science gets funding.
Yep.
And I mean, our mission was to provide unbiased research, and I think extension, it's a national organization, and the mission is to provide unbiased research. I have the question about all scientific research that's funded by anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you always have a funder. There is always a
And
funder.
scientists don't always agree. The opinion from one
We
scientist.
don't always agree.
We talked to other scientists at UF who had completely different views over the ones who would come and talk to us.
But what we can do is talk to our water resource people. So for example, there's stuff in here about the operations, about the nutrient management. What I don't see in here is precision agriculture. We were working really closely with people to do precision agriculture. And what that does is you have a real time, we have satellites now. You have a real time on your fertilizer equipment that is telling you this is the soil saturation here. This is the types of soil. This is a clay soil patch. This is a sandy soil patch. So we could make recommendations. They're saying this is how they're going to manage it. Well, that's great. We could potentially add, we'd like to see some precision agriculture
Yeah,
or whatever
I think-
our water resources people are recommending. We could.
And
say
are they
that.
gonna use in-ground sensing of moisture? And are
Right.
they gonna use computerized control for, for how the watering and also the, fertilization of the properties? go?
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
I think they said weather-based, and the research that we did showed that, and again, different climates, so
Yeah.
it's all different, but there's weather-based and there's soil-based.
Yeah.
And so I think they're advocating for weather-based,
okay.
but
Which is what agriculture generally is.
in general, but there's something to be said for the
We'll learn about the
soil-based
soil,
centers.
because
Yeah, there is
Yeah.
something to be said.
Then you don't want it doing on there.
Yeah.
But watering.
Anyway, yeah, let's have.
Weather
some-
station
let's have
data, so,
some
yeah.
county Who doesn't really have a dog in the fight, so to
Yeah.
speak, okay?
Yeah.
UF has a dog in the fight. so
That's what I was wondering. I mean, Steve recommended having them both here, but so it's just important that we have a dialogue where everybody's comfortable
Right,
speaking up.
right.
So I just want to be sure that we plan a meeting where everybody is comfortable speaking up in that meeting.
Well, so
So-
do you think that, I mean, I haven't met the golf course guy, but is he, does he argue?
I don't know. I don't know him. So I couldn't speak for him or how he would feel. I think what's important is the feelings of everybody at this table.
Maybe we.
How are
can get
you
a
all gonna
question from
feel?
him. Maybe we can get a question from him with a response that we can then,
That's an
whether he wants to
idea.
make a video or whether he wants to just send us, a letter back. And then we can have some
Yeah.
time between the time we get that,
Great
give him a deadline when we have to have that back by. And then we'll have enough time to look that over before we have our meeting.
Show us the course that's gonna mirror this one, maybe,
Good
one that's
idea.
very similar to the one they plan to put in.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Yeah, get some questions for him.
Yeah, yes. That's a good.
Comparisons are always
question.
kind of easy. If they say,
Yeah.
it's like this one that was built 2 years ago, or very similar, to
Right.
it gives you an idea.
Are you a little more comfortable now that we're going in the right direction?
There you go.
Because,
Yeah, we're going in a direction that's really potentially very profitable.
Okay.
It's a direction. That's the whole point.
I
That's
agree,
really
I
good.
agree. We're
Yeah.
usually pretty good at getting to the goal though, so.
So do we want to ask if they have a golf course that's implemented these procedures, and do they have
Sure.
some water quality monitoring data?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be very helpful. But then we could have the water people, report, yeah, this is equal to what we get, if we had this much housing.
So maybe I can send that to Lindsay, like since it's
Yeah.
their client, can you please follow up with him and just get us this data if it's available?
that's
We'll
great.
review the data. We can review the
That's great.
data at our meeting.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. And that also lets them know we're not just, running them around the block. We're also listening to their.
So you're saying, Summer, that the precision watering, or what was the term you used?
Precision agriculture,
Agriculture.
yeah.
Has weather sensor, atmospheric sensors, and then there are soil sensors right down close to the ground as the
In
thing
the
is
ground.
going over?
In the
It's
ground.
GIS based, so it's based on the geographic information system, the ones that we were using. The weather sensor is kind of a separate issue because they're using an on-site weather station. Now, that's good that it's on site. You're going to have localized weather data. So that's good, but this would indicate they're using weather data rather than soil data.
Yeah.
Because there's kind of two schools of approach, and it can be more difficult to utilize the soil moisture sensors, but there's just again, if you get a bunch of scientists in the room to talk about which is best, you're gonna get different. We had
The IFAS, we went to the IFAS facility one time, and the IFAS
Yeah.
facility had in-ground,
Yes.
soil sampling, moisture, sampling for that. And then, they have a computer that takes that and analyzes
Yeah.
that information and determines how much, to water and also fertilizer to put in.
So is one typically better than another, or for specific applications?
Yeah. It can be for the different applications. I mean, and that's why extension is so great. They should have some of this localized data. I mean, we had a turf grass plot that we specifically put in soil moisture sensors and we put in a weather station so that we could start to answer that question.
How difficult would it be to get? And we need someone to talk about those aspects.
Well, I'm thinking this guy, if we formulate the questions based on what you guys said, we can get it over to
Yeah.
this guy and
Yeah,
say,
we should.
do you have, so we can ask if they've implemented a golf course with similar systems and water quality data?
Correct.
Okay, and then we can ask about, do they have data on soil moisture versus weather
Right,
system?
right, yeah,
Okay,
So we should have the meeting first. I mean, we should do our homework and then have the meeting and then formulate those questions.
These questions are just going.
I think we were kind of trying to come up with some questions now, the idea being that by the time we get to our meeting, which is just a couple, maybe 2 to 3 weeks away, we would have his data in hand, and then we could have our water resources folks talking, and then could kind of pick it all apart.
Yeah.
We should
Yeah.
have a week with his data before we have the meeting, so.
Boy, that would be great. So yeah, we can ask for water quality data, soil moisture sensors versus weather data, and then we can ask about precision agriculture. Yeah, it's kind of this catch-all.
And then.
And if there's other
Potential
golf courses
questions,
that, that have been,
going to a letter to the board.
can provide us information in terms of.
Are the two big issues water and fertilizer
Yeah,
around golf courses?
yep.
I haven't
Trying
heard
to make
anybody
the
say anything
16th
about
or-
fertilizer, but those
Yeah,
guys
so
be
let's-
experts in that too.
Summer, can we set up a date?
Let me see if I can, usually I can do attendees, like the scheduling.
Meeting on the seventh, in case we want to attend the county commission meeting on the seventh. Another
It's at the
idea.
same time.
It's at the exact same
Yeah,
time,
that's right.
so would we call it a joint meeting, or I can get some clarity on that. Let's see, what's Stacy's schedule? Trying to see if I can add her in, but I don't know about this computer.
This is one of the most collaborative meetings I can recall.
Got a real issue.
We recommended for the fertilizer. That we did, I think we did an excellent job then too.
Yeah, but Palmer also led the way. I mean,
Yeah, I'm talking about when we actually got the county to actually. They did that just a couple of years ago. I was gone then, but that was a very collaborative meeting too.
yeah.
I mean, we might, in addition to like a letter of question, there's also a possibility we might want to make a motion with some general recommendations as well. Just putting that out.
Yeah, our concerns,
I
you know,
think that would,
recommendations,
Yeah.
anything, you know, we're not limited to what we
Yeah,
say in
exactly.
letters.
yeah,
Should we, real quick, I don't know if it would be useful to read over the motion that we made the last time we discussed this, just to kind of get a sense of, I mean, I have it in front of me, it's from the
Yeah, please
minutes
do.
from.
You got it.
did that ever go forward, by the
No,
way?
it did not.
this year?
No.
Cause they kind of dropped
So he didn't,
everything.
I mean, he didn't make any recommendations, that's
But
for
we-
the record.
We
Yeah,
did,
well,
we
we
had a
did
document,
make
but
a
we never
motion,
submitted it.
But didn't go.
Which is why I called for it, you know, to come back up again so that I could, you know, decide if this is something we're going.
But it was something like that the whole EPAC agreed on, so maybe it would be useful to just
Yeah.
kind of get
Yeah.
a sense of what we had talked about. and-
Yeah.
I didn't agree on. I
Oh, yeah, you did
prepared,
have-
and then I sent
That's right.
a message, I think, to Summer that I disagree, just for the record.
Yeah, that's right.
So you have that, right? You can
I
read
have
it?
it right now,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
great.
in the minutes from December 2022, the motion was accepted that if EPAC supports residential construction, Structures and facilities should be clustered and located in the least environmentally sensitive areas of the property, and that the higher quality of native habitat should be designated for conservation. Was agreed that conservation areas should be open and restricted to just acceptable passive recreation, for example, hiking, wildlife viewing, etc. Instead of proposed golf course in the southeast area and solar farm along the western perimeter of the property, there was general discussion to support residential components within those areas. That's kind of where we.
That's fair.
Based on the assumption that residential in those areas would be kinder to the environment than the golf course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was, it was.
And there was, I think there was.
But that may not be true.
scenario
That may not be
was
the
just
fact.
conservation.
That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, and that's why I backed up on.
Wonder if that was a database.
Yeah, no, that's why I was going where I was going with it in this meeting, that we need to get more information.
Okay, so, I was just looking at Stacy's calendar for when, do you all need it to be an evening meeting though?
I'm flexible, but I'm flexible.
Yeah, cause I'm not sure that she would have the after, let me see
And you need at least 2 weeks notice, is that correct?
usually it's a week or 5 days. If we just, schedule the meeting, then I'd let the meeting people know and they handle all of that.
All the public announcement has to be 5 days. And our recommendation or letter to the,
What are they saying?
Where is it? Where do they
It
keep?
can actually make,
Hey, do you know where we find Helen Travers?
When I spoke to her at the convention, she mentioned getting.
the
Can-
guy
can
from
you-
the university.
I don't know. It's, I thought I muted everybody. If y'all, I don't know. Let's see. Let's try again. There we go. We got a new person. We got people coming and going the whole time. Okay, where were we? Okay, I was just trying to think
Yeah.
if this is showing the evening.
And obviously, it's really important that we get quorum, like otherwise. we can't
absolutely,
have the-
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm traveling most of the rest of the month, so you probably won't be able to count on me, depending on the date.
Okay.
Maybe you can
Is
check
there-
in
is
remotely.
there- Oh, yeah.
But then I wouldn't be able to vote.
You may have been, both, but we can get your opinion, and that's just,
I could. No, I'm gonna be on a boat in the middle of the ocean.
Jay, what availability do you have this month? Is it
Let me,
next week?
look, knew you were gonna ask me that. Of course, Deborah.
Let's go on the boat with him.
Oh,
Right? There's a way to ruin his vacation.
that's good. Let's see here. Let's get
Okay,
to
now
my
it's showing
calendar.
evenings a little bit better. gonna go ahead and end the meeting now. Thank you all for joining us.
Well, thank you.